Okay. I kind of like doing this topic. It's a lot of people don't really focus on positional chess, and I think that's a mistake. They think it's not that important, or it doesn't happen too often, or if they're just good at tactics, that's going to carry them through. But I disagree with that approach. I think having strong fundamentals is so important. So, as it says by the Annex Chess Club, today we'll be talking about blockading the isolate queen's pawn. We're going to start off with this position, but before we even get into it, what are some openings that lead to an isolated queen's pawn? And what openings do we get in IQP? Do you know of any? Yes, Richard. Yes, the Terrash. In which line? In which opening, Peter?
It can happen usually when oh geez, trying to think. I can it's after C takes, E takes, and then
you're talking about the French?
No, sorry, my mistake. Terrash defense for black with against D5.
The Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit, yes, sorry.
So in the Queen's Gambit, the Tarrasch variation with early C5, and we give them the isolate pawn.
Yes, yeah.
So this is actually an interesting thing. Peter, I'm glad you raised this. This is actually what I wanted to talk about as well. Isaac and Richard, you guys are absolutely right. You can also get this in the Caro-Kann, specifically the panel variation, which is C4 and takes. Black can take the pawn right away, but usually they take it with the knight. Something like this happens. There's also probably the line which you guys are more familiar with, something like C4 here. And again, white will get this isolated pawn. White's goal is to develop this bishop right away, but a very big tip, if you're playing this with the black pieces, you always want to wait for the bishop to move once. As soon as the bishop moves, then we're really happy for them to take, because basically they've lost the tempo. They moved once and then twice, and then we just develop normally. We'll talk about how to specifically play against an isolated pawn, but it doesn't only happen here. It could also get into Sicilian. My pet opening with white in the Sicilian is the Alapin with C3. And there's many different, basically every Alapin gives you an isolated queen's pawn. Almost any you can mention. The knight C6 variation, takes, and then D5. And after takes, queen takes, there's an isolated pawn. You can get it in D5 right away. And again, you have the isolated queen's pawn. You can also do it in the knight F6 variation with something like this. And again, takes, and you get the isolated queen's pawn. Normal development happens. Many different openings, but it doesn't only happen with E4. It can also happen with D4. Just briefly, there's the Tarrasch in the French where you get the isolated queen's pawn where it takes, knight F3. And I know that the theory goes with bishop B5 check, but we can take. And again, our goal is just to develop nicely. I really could go on forever talking about how many openings result in isolated pawns. So there's a lot of openings, probably openings you play. There are variations that have isolated pawns either for you or for your opponent. So this is an incredibly important class, I think, for anyone, both how to play with and how to play against it. We'll touch on both, but how to play with it is going to come later. For now, we're going to talk about how to play against it, a very key idea. Before we jump too deep into it, Peter brought up something I wanted to discuss. So in the Tarrasch variation in the Queen's Gambit, the C5, usually we will develop. And I'm going to explain why in a moment. Taking right away on C5 seems like a good move, but this is in fact a mistake. Let me turn off the engine. What is the best move here for black? How do we punish this move? It seems like a good move, because if we take the free pawn, they take our pawn. And white's just going to be up a pawn. But what move can black play here? What move should black play in this position? Yeah, Richard is right. Anyone else? It's black to play here. Black to play. Knight f6, defending the pawn is a completely adequate move, but here we want to actually punish the move, not just react to the move, but punish it. Yeah, Isaac's right. We can play the move d4. At first glance, this is a very committal move, so you have to be very careful making moves like this, because obviously it's an isolate pawn, and now it's in our opponent's territory. But this serves a few key purposes. Whenever we play d4, this is actually a very often idea in the isolate pawn. For white, it's to go to d5 with the d pawn, and for black, it's to d4. We want to remove the opportunity for their knight to come in to blockade our pawn. So not only are we trying to be aggressive, we're also trying to stop future plans. Let's say they move their knight. They're holding on to this pawn. How do you think we should play? Okay, Richard, yeah. Yeah, we want to attack the knight. The question is how. There's a few good ways. I mean, there's a few moves that come to mind. Maybe queen d5, f5, knight f6, bishop f5. Also, we could just ignore it. We could take. Taking seems like a blunder, but the point is to win the knight back like this. This is not a line I recommend. In fact, this is really bad. Because of what? It seems like we just won the knight. I'll go back to the other point in a second. We're just basically allowing our opponent to develop with tempo. Yeah, George, that's right. How can white develop with tempo in this position? And we'll go back to the previous one. All right, very simply, we're going to give white a free tempo. I mean, our queen is kind of misplaced here, and now rook c1 is coming in. And our only way to avoid losing the bishop is queen f5. Yikes. This pawn is certainly close to falling. Probably knight f3, some queen a4 combination. It's hard to imagine black is going to have an easy time here. In fact, we could change the moves. We could go queen a4, then maybe even g3. The position's going to be really hard for black. So, coming back here, we probably want to get rid of the knight. Bishop f5 seems logical. And let's say they move their knight to hit our bishop. How should we play? Where should we move this guy? Where'd be a good place to move this bishop? And there's actually two good answers here. Keep control of d3. Why is controlling d3 so important? Okay, so just for clarification for what other people are wondering, I was told to move bishop g6. I like bishop g6, but it's not to control d3. Certainly controlling the square in front of you is important, but here our opponent has more than enough control of the d3 square. The point behind playing this move is that we're limiting our opponent's knight. In fact, the knight has no active jumps. That's why I really like this move. When we're playing chess, not only is it a good idea to figure out the optimal placement from your pieces, but you also want to play against your opponent. And so I really like this move, bishop g6. You kind of kill your opponent's ability to play any active moves for their knight. And development for us will be simple. This is only a temporary sacrifice, but it's going to be really hard to imagine they hold up. Yeah, George, I want to address that move in a moment. It's going to be very hard to imagine white holding on to this pawn. Right? Let's say they play knight f3, seemingly a good move. We're developing with tempo. Well, then we just take the pawn. Right? But what if they play b4? The white is adamant they need to defend this pawn. This is too slow, and the position is collapsing in on itself. How should we play against b4? This is actually a very thematic idea. You'll see this a lot when you see this structure. There is, in fact, two good moves here. Now, Isaac and Richard gave me the same move, but there's actually another move here that works as well. So for Richard and Isaac, you guys found one move. Is there another move that's a good way to play against these pawns while everyone else is thinking about the first one? So knight c6 is fine, but then I'm just able to reinforce my pawn with another pawn. I have nothing against knight c6. It's a good move. You're developing, hitting the pawn, but we're not really dealing with the issue at hand here. Think about what attacks a pawn best. Yeah, Richard, that's right. In chess, pawn attacks a pawn best. And so think about how we can try to dismantle or damage or affect the structure on the queen side here. Yeah, George, that's right. There's two moves. There's the move a5. This is a more principled approach. In chess, you want to remove your opponent's defenders first, and we're trying to distract this guy. In the event that this pawn takes, well, then you're effectively just losing everything on the queen side. Certainly they're up a pawn, but this pawn's going to be lost soon, and probably a2 as well. If they don't defend it with a pawn, it's kind of hard to imagine this structure holding on for too long. We can develop with tempo. Bishop c5 is in the air with some queen a5 checks. And even if we don't have any tactics here, how is white's structure holding together? Imagine we have nothing. Imagine white is somehow able to get away scot-free. They have this really weak isolated pawn on c5. Their bishop is misplaced. And our development is super obvious. We're going to bring in our knight and then our bishop. We're going to castle. We still are not sure where their bishop is going because e3 will always probably be met by capturing. And even in this position, they have this just very weak isolated pawn. Obviously, this bishop is hanging. Another move, which is the move that George and Richard both gave, is the move b6. And this you see a lot in specifically queen's pawn openings, like queen's gambit for white. We want to attack the pawn that's in front. Yeah, Richard, I'll address that. That's a good question. If they take, then how should black play in this position? Obviously, we could take the pawn back, but then we're probably just going to be down a pawn the whole game. What would be better for black in this position? How do we play an in-between move? Richard, you're absolutely right here. Yeah. Taking advantage of the fact that our opponent's king is a little exposed, we can simply just take the pawn with check. Now, of course, they can block, but we can take the bishop back. We actually don't even need a rush. We could take the pawn right away because there's actually no good pin for white to make in this position because the b1 square is not available to them. So I think taking is fine. It's a little bit unnerving. Of course, you could take with the bishop as well. This is probably, if this was a blitz game, I would take with the bishop with the sole point of trying to play against this pawn. Because anytime they create a battery to try to win this, that means that this pawn on a2 is not going to be well defended. And keep in mind, who says that we need to lose this pawn? However, if you've given me a choice, I would almost certainly play a5 here. Almost certainly. I was asked this question, and I think it's an important question. If they play e3, is it a good idea to play d3? What do you think? What do you guys think? Just in general about meeting e3 with d3. What do you guys think about this move? Before I even input any of my opinion on it. What's your reaction? And explain a little bit why. Especially in a positional class, when we're talking about fundamentals, understanding is a part of that. So, of course, you could get lucky by just giving a yes or no answer, but an explanation, even a brief one, just a few words, is just all I need. And I'll give you guys a moment here to do that here. So we have to be honest with ourselves when we see a move like this. D3 is a very committal move. If it works, it's a stroke of brilliance because we are really going out there. But the problem is that this pawn is so far advanced, so far away from our own pieces, it just doesn't work in this position. Now, maybe if they had a pawn on d2, that could potentially work. but there's no way we're able to hold on to this pawn. Just a simple move e4 is good enough. And this pawn is literally getting lost the next move. We just don't have enough pieces. We don't have any pieces that we can use to defend the pawn at all. We cannot bring a rook in. We can't drop another bishop. If this was some crazy house, and maybe this would be a great move, but we're just unable to hold on to this pawn, and if it just falls, right? Okay, we take here and they take there. If we don't want to take because the bishop is able to take back, and so we're really just helping our opponent, simply taking on c5, and we're creating this symmetrical structure that is better for black because we're more active. Like, let's say something like this. And I really like this move as we're playing against this bishop. This bishop is now not going to develop due to the hanging pawn on b2. The bishops here are phenomenal. And sure, white is going to try to play against them. But at the moment, they're very active here. And our next moves are just going to be develop our minor pieces. So when you have, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here because I should talk about this for later. But a tip is when you have an isolated pawn, it's almost in your favor to trade it off. You're happy to trade off the isolated pawn. Okay. We talked a lot about the isolated pawn, but now let's really get into it. So let's talk about blockading. And let's start off with a pretty simple position. In fact, there's nothing more simple than this. I'm going to give a really simple question in the beginning, and then we're going to get harder as we go. So what move should black play? And there's a kind of a point behind this. I'm not just trying to give you a very easy puzzle. Yeah, Isaac, you're right. Yeah. Anyone else? What move should black play here? Yeah, the knight on b4 is being hit. We can just play knight d5. This is a very thematic idea. Very common. In fact, one of the most common ideas in IQP structures is to put your knight on d5. Why? Because it blockades the pawn. And how do we get it there is we develop it like this. That's one way. And the other way is through d7. So we either are going to go like this or like that. Now, usually we want to put our knight on c6 in chess because it attacks more squares in the center. So more likely your knight is going to be here, which means that if your knight is here, you have two ways to reroute it. So probably the last move for black was knight b4. White kicked it out. So now we play knight d5. Very logical. Very logical. You guys are all right. But this is not the moment that I thought would be kind of unique and interesting to talk about, but rather after the move rook c1, clearly threatening our opponent's knight with a discovered attack, what move should black play? And let me flip the board here to make life a little bit easier for you guys. What move do you think black should play? And this is kind of an interesting decision. When you give me the move, just give me a few words why you chose that move. I want to point out that if I were to turn on the engine here, I'm gonna, as I speak, feel free to continue thinking about your move. If you were to turn on the engine here, there's probably 3 moves here for black that are more or less around equal in evaluation. And so if you were to analyze this with a computer and not your own brain, you'd be like, oh, like 3 different moves work. Why is Mark really fantasizing this position? Wrong approach. Because if you play certain moves, it will completely change the nature of the position. We're playing against an isolated pawn, so our plan becomes more simple, more obvious. If we change the nature of the position, it becomes much more difficult to come up with a plan. And maybe that means it's going to be much more difficult for us to play. Maybe that means our pieces are poorly placed. I'll let you guys think. How do you think black should play? And tell me why. In a few words. I'm not looking for essay. I'm not looking for paragraphs. Just a few words. And I will address literally every single move that is given to me. I'll also address moves that aren't given to me. I'm that kind of guy. I'll analyze everything. Usually people don't have a lot of people don't have questions for me because I analyze everything, but always feel free to ask if I've forgotten to take a look at something that you thought was important. I'll give you 30 more seconds and then we'll really begin here. So really, the question for you should be, where do we move our queen? Because we can't ignore the threat. Now, I just want to point out, and this is a move that someone gave, the move rook c8 is a blunder in this specific position. Maybe you meant something else. Because white has the discovery 95, and if queen c1, then what move will white play to win material? A Zwischenwurf in German, or an intermezzo in Italian, or an intermediate or in-between move in English. We are able to avoid losing the knight. Before capturing the queen, we will deliver a knight check. Now there's two different checks. So I always encourage you to give me coordinates. This way you're specific with me, so I don't have to guess what you're saying. But more importantly, you're being honest with yourself. Knight e7, and then we take the queen. We're up a knight. And funny enough, you can't even attack the knight, because if you do, you get checkmated in one. Okay, but I'm really just getting away. Yeah, very beautiful connection of the knights to deliver mate. I just have to show that. Somebody said knight takes f6. This is okay. Ultimately not as good, because in this position, our knight is also hanging on e5. So after all these trades, probably, actually, I wouldn't even say black is losing in this position. I would say this position with perfect play is a draw, because my rook is quite active, and white has to deal with backrank mate right now. So, but I'm okay. This is way too so unrelated to what I'm trying to say. Okay, I always get lost, so I have to reel myself back in. So we have to move the queen. The question is where. So we obviously not on the c file. So we really have a few options. We have queen d6. We have queen d8. We have queen b8. We have queen b6, and we have queen a5. And we're going to look at all of them. We're going to look at all of them. And let's start with both queen b6 and queen b8. They're actually related. They're both equally, well, not equally. Queen b8 is worse. But queen b8 and queen b6 have a problem, both of them. Let's see if any of you can find what is the issue with queen b8 and queen b6. They're both related in some way. Something white can do here. What can white do about both of these moves? Isaac's right. Good job, Isaac. Well, not right now, UMac Arthurs. If you could put in your whole name, UMang and UMac Arthurs, so just I know who you are, that'd be fantastic. If you could just change your name on Zoom. Yeah, Richard, that's right. Okay, I can change it. I'll just space it out, just so I know your first name and last name. Okay, so the issue with queen b6 and queen b8 is the fact that they can take. And if we take back with the pawn, then we're not really playing against anything. And of course, white is going to maintain this small little advantage because of their play on the c file, defending the pawn. Maybe even b4 is good, although there's probably a5. So probably rook e2 to c2. White has just the tiniest of advantages here. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the computer just had zeros here after rook c8. But I feel like we could probably apply a little pressure on the c file. Not much here. But black can't do anything. That's a problem. And we obviously cannot take with the knight because there's this fork. So both queen b8 and queen b6 fall under the same issue of knight takes. Okay. So now we have other moves. So let's talk about queen d6. Now, I'm surprised nobody said this move, because naturally this is the first move that comes to my mind. I want to play rook d8, and I want to try to put pressure on d4. Do we like this move? I'm actually not even going to try to influence you guys here. Do we like this move or not? And tell me why we do or we don't like this move. Always, when you're playing positional chess, tactics have to be you have to be comfortable with tactics in the sense of strong positional moves are backed up with good tactics. You just want to make sure that when you're playing logical moves, you're not blundering anything. There's nothing sadder than outplaying your opponent and then blundering material. It's happened to all of us. It usually happens to my opponents, but it happens to all of them. They casually outplay me, but then I show them that at the last moment, when they took the foot off the pedal. I'm just joking. Queen d6 is not something to be afraid of. This is a good move. I'm okay with this move. It offers just a small problem, though, which I will mention in a moment. Knight b5 is not something to be worried about because we can kick out the knight. And the knight is unable to come in. Right? Knight c7 is, our knight's here, and knight d6, where it's not a move. What could be a potential issue here? How can white develop a tempo? How can white develop a tempo? Knight c4 is not really developing with tempo. And in fact, we will welcome such a move. Black welcomes it because white is weakening up the position of their knight. So I can just even go back or here. And I mean, what is this knight isn't doing much. We're actually making our knight worse. Knight e4, again, when you have a blockade, I will talk about this more when we start talking about the Nguyen game. But when you're playing with against an isolated pawn, you always want to trade. So black is going to be welcoming trades. In fact, that's all black wants. The more pieces traded off, the easier it'll be to take advantage of this pawn. How can white develop with tempo? Tip. Look at something that is not defended, or something that is poorly defended, or inadequately defended, and think about how you can take advantage of this move, of this piece or material. And Isaac and Richard, you guys are right. The pawn is not well defended. And this happens a lot in queen's pawn openings, because as soon as you develop your bishop, this pawn is no longer defended. We have to remember that the only piece that defends the B and G pawns in the starting position are bishops. As soon as they are developed, nothing is defending those pawns. In this position specifically, queen b3 is a very annoying move. And so we're not left with good decisions here. We either have to move our queen, which potentially, I mean, which would just be a waste of time. And probably the trade is still good for them, because now their knight is starting to be able to come in. Or queen removed that opportunity, but now, let's say the knight takes, the knight comes in, maybe knight d6 is a problem, maybe rook c7 is a problem. This is not what we wanted. This is not what we want. We just have one of those moves, but not the other. And suddenly white is just creating play out of nowhere. This is how a lot of people get outplayed, where they just make one small mistake and you're giving your opponent that opportunity just to put a little bit of pressure on you, and it snowballs. It's really a snowball effect. And you turn on the engine here, as I said, and it show you plus, 0.2, and you're like, oh, big whoops, it went from 0 to 0.2. But it's like, why did you do that? This would be a bigger issue for me if I were looking at your games than probably any other specific move, because this is where it all begins. Okay. If we go b6, then c6 is weak. And again, that means I will happily take advantage of it. Probably my knight's going there the next move. Of course, I don't even want to talk about rook b8. It's just a disgusting looking move to waste a tempo with my rook to defend a pawn where my rook is no better than before. Of course, knight b5 here, just as good as before. I mean, I don't see any problem with knight b5 here. Not a pleasant move. If you have to play moves like this, that means you've made a mistake. You've made a mistake. And the other move that you guys gave, which Isaac and Richard gave, was both queen a5, but it results in the same move as well. So as we see, this position is not as simple as it seems. At first glance, it's like, oh, it's just we blockaded, black is better, white has a nice late pawn, but there's just a minuscule amount of pressure that can start happening. So what move should black play to avoid any of that? We're going to play a little bit of a weird looking move, but it's to defend this pawn. And then that means that our rooks will come in next. So where do you think black should move their queen in this position? Going back, and we basically looked at almost everything. It's a move I may have not even put in. Let me check. Actually, I'll check after I... Yeah, we can slide our queen to e7. Did I put that move in? I did not. Queen e7. Now, queen e8 is obviously not as good for the same reason. So queen e7. Our idea, let's make this main line. Our idea is very simple. We're just getting our rooks active, and it's actually really hard for white to come up with any plan. The hard part about playing with an isolated pawn is you really have only a few ideas. It's either mating, winning material of some sort, some tactics, or putting pressure on your opponent aggressively. There's no such thing as positional play with an isolated pawn, specifically with a isolated queen's pawn. Because isolated pawn is a very committal weakness. You're saying, okay, I'm going to have this isolated pawn, but I have more space, which means I'm going to attack you. Or that means I have more space, which means I'm going to sacrifice on you. Or that means I have no weakness, no concrete weaknesses, but I'm going to create weaknesses for you. But here black covers all of its bases. And we cover f7, which probably isn't too important, but there's always a sack when you're playing with the black side that you have to worry about. And as I said, like, what will white play? Like, it's so unclear. If they take, we just take back. We're going to play rook c8 next. If they move their queen, saying, oh, I improved my queen, it's like, okay, I don't care. I'm going here next. And then I probably am going to consider taking this knight. Maybe I'll even jump my knight here. Black's position is completely easy to play. Very easy. We get our rooks active, and then our idea is to attack this pawn. The whole point of blockading a pawn in general is to ensure that our opponent cannot trade their pawn off. So as an example, if we had moved our knight away, we'd have to really worry about them trading off their pawn. When we play knight d5, we remove the opportunity for our opponent to trade off this pawn. We want to make sure this pawn stays there. And okay, black's position here is completely good. So one other question that someone asked is, why can't we just take this knight? Seems like a good move. Even if rook takes, we can sidestep our queen and do the same thing. Although maybe they can do this, and that's probably problematic. Another issue is that we are actually improving our opponent's pawn structure here. They have now hanging pawns, which I've taken a look at. I like taking a look at hanging pawns. It's an interesting concept. But hanging pawns is not as bad as isolated pawns. The pawns are defended. And white potentially has the b file to put pressure on this pawn. It's going to be harder for black to really play against these pawns, whereas it's much easier to play against this one. So we don't want to change the nature of the position too much. Queen e7 is good. Okay, you guys are probably tired of me fixating on this position. I mean, we've basically taken a look at every variation under the sun. Let's move on. Okay, so there's really, I'm going to put this in while you guys are thinking about a move here for black. So it's going to be black to play. There's really two ideas for playing against. I should send you guys this study so you guys can access it as well. I believe it's whoops. I believe that it's public. Yeah, so you guys should be able to access it. I'll also email it to George along with the homework that I will give you, and he will give it to all of you. Okay. Knight is almost always the best blockading piece. Okay. So I kind of told you the answer. But in general, I would not consider taking this pawn. It's very dangerous. And it's like, why? Like, best case scenario, you probably win a pawn. But worst case scenario, just lose on the spot. Like, ready, the issue is that they're threatening to trap our knight. And if we try to play e6 to save our knight with our bishop, white could take, and then go bishop c4. So we're not even going to win material. We're about to lose the pawn back. And what did we get for it? Nothing. In fact, you could say, but Mark, don't we win this pawn? Again, you're really playing with fire here because we're so underdeveloped that even if white doesn't go for material and tries to go for this pawn on b6, white can just really put a lot of pressure on us. And we deserve any tactical loss we get. Look at these pieces. We haven't developed them. Yeah, whereas white has developed everything. I mean, I would think even rook a1 to a8 is a good idea, even this move. So this is not the move you should consider. This is very dangerous. Unless every tactic works and you're spending 3 hours on that move, it's very impractical to play. So knight d5 is good. And so white's going to develop their bishop naturally. Let's say they play the move bishop to d3. How should we play against this move? The greater concern isn't how do we play against this move specifically, but think about the structure. If I gave you a few moves, what does your development look like here? How do we develop our dark square bishop? How do we develop our knight? What side of the board are we castling? And then what will we play? Yeah, Richard, that's good. I would say the same thing. Isaac, and then what? Don't give me one move, give me a few moves. Think about if black just had a few moves here, how would they develop their pieces? Yeah. Isaac, that's good, Isaac. Yeah, good job. Firstly, I like the idea of dealing with this bishop here. Now, we certainly are not playing e6. Why is this not good for us? And forget about the tactical component of the fact that knight g5 wins material. But just tell me, yeah, Peter, that's right. Why do you think I'm against this idea? We ruined our pawn structure. Apart from the fact that we've created an isolated pawn on e6 that becomes very easy to attack, with moves like knight g5, as I just said. Your opponent now has the blockade that they can play. They can do the blockade on us. And we're not really improving anything. The f-file is not worth it when we castle. So, of course, we're going to play g6. They'll take. If they don't take, we ignore it, right? We can just develop easily. But if they take, again, we want to keep our pawn structure nicely together. So we're going to take the h-pawn. We're going to go here. We're going to play knight d7. We're going to castle, and then they play a3. What should we do with this knight? Kind of the last point. And this is the most important part for me to see, what do you guys think we should do with this guy? I mean, the knight on d7 currently, it's not bad. It's dealing with this knight e5 idea for white. But can we improve our own knight? Yeah, Isaac, that's right. Yeah, Richard, that's definitely true. Now, if this was a really fast game, like ultra bullet game, I would, without a doubt, put the knight on f6. But this is really a beginner, not a beginner. It's a easy move, but it really doesn't do anything. And in fact, you're actually lying to yourself when you make this move, because you're like, oh, I'm improving my knight. But if you really think about it, you've blocked your bishop. And what new square do you have for your knight? I mean, it's not serious. Knight g4 can be kicked away. And conversely, you give your opponent that active square. I really like the idea of b5. This move b5 is multi-purposeful. Potentially, we were going to double up and play against on the a file. That's number one. Number two, in the event that they ever put pressure on our knight, we can always reinforce it. And we have clear active squares for our knight on the queen side. When we play knight f6, it's not, there's no clear active squares on the king side for the knight. I mean, where's this knight going? But here, it's much more evident, right? The two moves. And again, you could play b3, but as soon as you do that, that means a3 becomes weak. And I could take this low. I don't have to play this right away. And maybe I play e6. Maybe I move my rook. I can play bishop f8 to put more pressure on this pawn. Maybe I can go b4 to undouble my pawns. Position for black is great. It's great. They're very easy to play. And again, this is one of those positions that is around equality that you need to really start getting a good grip of where you want to put your pieces at. Because there's different types of equality. And I think soon we're going to get to a stage where computers going to think everything's either made in 1 million or 000. But you have to learn how to play in those 000 positions where it's like, oh, I could do this move or that move or this move. But if you follow the World Championship game, the rook and knight and 2 pawns versus queen, the famous Carlsen versus Nepo match last time in game 6, the computer was saying zeros for a long time until suddenly Magnus was winning. Of course, very complicated position. I don't want to say anything about Nepo. Obviously, I wouldn't have been able to hold that either. But my point is, there's different types of zeros. That computer was saying that, oh, it's just a draw. But obviously, Magnus had no chance of losing. Even if he blundered 2 pawns, it was a draw. If he blundered a knight but kept those 2 pawns, it was a draw. So it's like he could get away with quite a few things and still hold, whereas his opponent had to play accurate moves. Here, we have a very pleasant position where opponents, again, it's very unclear what they're going to do. We have a lot of ideas. Playing on the A file, activating our knight. That's exactly what we want to see. Okay, let's move on here. And what move should black play here? It's a Kole Zukertort, Bator Sambuev. Back when he used to live in Toronto, was famous for playing this opening exclusively. And he once destroyed me with it with white. I've learned how to play against it, but he hasn't played it against me since. He decided to be nice to me. He beat me once and he's like, all right, let's try something else against this kid. It's only this year where I actually started getting some points on the board against him. It's actually a move that we've already spoken about. Yeah, Isaac's right. So I'm getting some conflicting answers. Now, okay, it's important to note the tactics, just in case anyone's asking. This is not a free pawn because of our queen that's going to get lost. And this seems to be a blockade. But before I talk about this too much, this move loses the game instantly. Shockingly. Why? Yes, Isaac, and then what? What after that move, Isaac? What will white play right after that? Yeah, and then what? Yeah. The issue here, and this is really important, and I'm glad that this move was brought up. When you're blockading, you cannot forget about the safety of your own king. In this position, white is winning because nothing is defending our king, really. Knight CB3 and then block. What do you mean by knight CB3? Oh, knight CB4, I think you meant. Yes, okay, I understand. That's why I'm here. It's okay, I can read minds. I'm a mind reader. Bishop h7 for white wins the game right away. If you ignore it, that will lose the queen. And if you take, you have to come back. Now suddenly this bishop is hanging. I don't have to rush to take the bishop. I could really play with my food a little bit, threaten mate in 1 if I want to. I would say in the practical game, I would probably take this bishop. The computer's gonna hate me for it, but who cares? I'm definitely winning this position. Not only am I threatening your knight, I'm also threatening a fork. I'm up 2 pawns. If I don't win this, I don't deserve my title. Oh, I should just give it away. But yeah, this knight is very key on f6. And in fact, we're going to look, maybe I should jump to chapter 8 right after this. There's a chapter, is it chapter 8 or maybe it's a different one? Believe it's chapter 8, where we talk about this structure about these two knights. Generally, you want to have a structure with your knight on f6 and your other knight comes to d5. Why? Because this knight will serve the purpose of defending your king. That's all it needs to do, right? We want to make sure we can deal with the queen and bishops thing. Because think about your knight. It's really taking away a lot of squares. We're removing the queen. And one of the basic ideas of attacking is you want to put major pieces on the same file as your opponent's king. Okay, well, that square is gone. The other square is queen h5, right? Double teaming on h7. That square is gone. h7 sacks. That square is gone. No Greek gifts, no queen activity, nothing. Our one knight does all of that. As soon as you move it, it's kind of like a can of worms. Suddenly everything is winning for your opponent. So we must activate our other knight. And we're going to bring our knight into b4. And the point is, we hit our opponent. I mean, we could say we're hitting this pawn. If I'm being totally honest, I don't know how much we're really hitting it. Like, do we really need that pawn? And maybe we have to worry about this pawn here. But we really want to take their light square bishop. Because if they just go here, not only are we taking this bishop, we can immediately go on the offensive. What move do you think would be good here for black to go on the offensive? Basically instantly. Knight d5, as I said, we want to keep our knight here. We want to keep our knight here. Even if we go knight d5, I'm really worried about moves like knight f7. When you're playing chess, think about your least active piece. Think about how you can bring into the game. Bishop f6. You mean, well, the knight is currently on f6, so I don't know what that means. I like the move. Rook e7 is a nice move with the idea of rook c7. I really like this move. This is a good move. I also like b5, which somebody gave as well, with the idea of queen b6, kicking out our opponent's knight. Also queen d5, threatening mate in 1. Many good moves here. So a lot of opportunity to become nice and aggressive. If they swing their bishop back to b1, then we could do what we wanted to do. Why did we put our knight here to do what? We came to do what the topic of this class is all about: blockading the isolated queen's pawn. We get to do it right here, right now. No questions asked. We're going to go knight d5. And we're actually threatening something here. What are we threatening in this position? What is black threatening here? Richard, probably with the knight there. Wouldn't make sense to take with the bishop. Almost certainly we're taking with the knight. Almost certainly. I actually can't imagine, other than maybe queen f1, I can't imagine taking with the bishop. But you're absolutely right. Knight f4 is coming in next. Huge fork. g2 is falling. Fantastic position for black. Just beautiful. And if white has to spend their time dealing with that, that probably creates more issues. And by the way, even if we didn't have that fork, the issue is they can't bring in the rook, obviously, as we know, knight f4. So they have no rook lifts at the moment. It's just like, what do they play? Like, do they start just going and opening up their own king? It's one of those positions that's really hard for white to play. But for black, it's so easy. Like, as Isaac has told us, we can reroute our rook here. We can play b5 to kick out this knight. We can try to go for space on the queen side. We can improve this bishop. We can fianchetto this bishop. We can do whatever we want. Black structure here is optimal in the sense of our pieces are good and they are only going up from here. They're good and they can only go up. However, white's pieces, this bishop is blockaded by this pawn. This bishop is good, but it needs help. This knight is good. it needs help. And this knight is all not doing anything. And the major pieces are also not doing anything. Conversely, our major pieces are going to come in and take the file. We can kick out our opponent's pieces, and our position is very good. I want to jump to chapter 8 and kind of talk about this structure. It seems that, oh, everything's good. It's one of those normal isolate queen's pawns. But black rushed to play knight d5. Or they had their knight on d5 and they decided to keep it this way. By the way, if your g8 knight gets to d5, that means that this knight needs to get to f6. This is really important. We needed to defend it this way. If I was black and I had the opportunity to, let's say this was the position, I would do this. But I don't have the opportunity to, because if I go knight f6, what would white play here? There's actually two. No, there's one good move here. There's one good move here. Black wants to do this. So very simply, we play against that. And again, this potentially will tie into what we're going to talk about later. We can play and come up with our own plan, or we can play and stop our opponent from having a good plan. We can play the move a3. That's it. This takes away the b4 square for our opponent's knight. And that means that they're going to have to waste some time to get their knight there. They can move their bishop and then get their knight around. Okay, they move their bishop. Now they have to worry about getting pinned. And this is what I mean. Like you're trying to do one thing and it's so slow and you're wasting time. And eventually, by the way, even here, I can trade off my isolated pawn if I wanted to. I could be like, you know what? I've had enough. I've had enough. I don't have my isolated pawn anymore. Now, of course, you could say that opens their bishop and that's a whole different conversation. But I'm saying white has this on the table now because we're being so slow. Now, what if we don't do that? What if we just make some normal move? Let's say we play b6 to develop our bishop on this diagonal, right? Because the bishop is currently blocked. Why don't we just put it on this diagonal, Mark? It's a wide open diagonal. I know this is a good diagonal. White is much better here. You could almost make the argument white's winning here. Why? What move do you think white should play here? So 95 is definitely something black would welcome. Remember the idea of trading against an isolated pawn? That's exactly what we would do here. In this position, we can simply take the knight. We take back, they take this knight. Now we have an isolated pawn over here, and now they'll just they could even trade queens, but no even rush to do that. Look to take advantage of this move. And there's actually a few good options, very enticing options here. But there's one that I like more than others, but I would say there's a few good moves here. A3 is never a bad move. A3 is good. It's a good move. I would say A3 is okay. We have better. Again, think about how we can play against them. There's this interesting idea of playing the move. Yeah, we could ignore them and play our own thing and try to mate them. This is a common idea in the IQP structure for white. We can play a3 or just some sort of waiting move. Knight b6. How is that possible? This is the b6 square. We can play just some waiting move with a3. And the point is that when they develop their bishop, what will we play to make sure that this diagonal is blocked forever? Do we take with the bishop or do we take with the knight? This is actually important. One is not as good as the other one. If we do, actually, I'll give you a second. I'll give you 30 seconds and then I will say what I'm thinking. I would say when you're playing with isolate pawn, your light square bishop is king. It's better than all your other minor pieces. So we definitely want to keep this bishop around. Unless we were to win this pawn, it wouldn't make sense. And if we play queen b3 here, the problem is that they have knight a5. Right, Isaac? They kick away the queen. Maybe knight even comes to c4. The rook can go to c8, bishop f6. Black has a very easy time. However, if we were to take with the knight, the bishop is blocked, and that means that we can reintroduce our bishop to a different diagonal. Now remember, when we have the isolate pawn, and the theme here doesn't change, we're going to be trying to play against our opponent's king. Nothing defending black's king. Maybe this bishop a little bit. Where should this bishop move? Some of you said this. This knight will move if necessary. Also, they can reinforce it. I would care to try to attack our opponent's king. Where should we move our bishop? Bishop d3. Why? Well, we can try to create a battery to go for mate. We can move our knight to go for queen h5. We can move our knight to lift our rook. We could play h4. By the way, this is an idea maybe none of you have seen before, but the idea of going this. Many different ideas. So let's attack their king. So as you see, the knight, as we just talked about in chapter 3, the knight belongs on f6. It must be on f6. So if it's somehow on d5, you should strongly consider bringing it back for the sake of defending your king. Can black take? Yeah, so that's a good question. The whole point of h4, I guess I should have gone a little bit more into depth there. The whole point of h4 is that we usually do it with a rook here. So let me just make a move here. Let's say rook e3. Let's say some move. We play h4 here. And the point is that if you take, I can lift my rook up to try to come here. And if you don't take, then I might have knight g5. I'm not saying it works particularly in this position. I'm just talking about specific, more or less ideas that happen. And sometimes we do just straight up sacrifice the pawn here, and we still try to get the rook active like this. Also a very bizarre way of activation. I wouldn't play this. It's just an idea I would consider. Okay, a very bizarre game. I wasn't able to find who played this, so my apologies. If you find it, you can let me know. It's black to play, and the position is striking, right? It's unlike anything we've seen before. And it seems great. And this is an issue, as I said, I will talk while you guys are thinking. This seems like an issue a lot of you have, and I think I mentioned this last class as well. But, oh my God, Mark, all my pieces are great, but now what? Everything is good. I've done everything you told me. I doubled my rooks. My queen is good. My knights are good. My bishop is great. And if you just take a very basic look, it's kind of hard to disagree. Like, what can black do to really improve this position? But the mistake is that you're only thinking about yourself here. You're being selfish. Think about how you can react to your opponent's position. Look at your opponent's pieces. How can you play against them? That is the question. Not, oh, like my pieces are so beautiful. If we were just playing chess on itself, then this is one of the most beautiful positions black could have. But that's not it. White has pieces. White has pawns. How can we play against them? Black to play. Isaac, and then what? What would you do after that move? Explain the move to me. Okay, and then what, Isaac? What after that? What's the idea? I know this is all about blockading the IQP, but we're also adjacently going to be talking about how to play against it. So not only, I mean, we've blockaded it. Great, Mark. I've done what you told me. I blockaded the pawn. But now what? Now what? Your opponent isn't going to resign when you blockade the pawn. Okay, Isaac, that's actually not a bad idea. That's okay. There's something better, Isaac, that takes much less moves. You could do much faster. Okay, that's interesting. I'll give everyone else maybe 30 more seconds and then I will begin my rant for the 100th time today. And don't think about it too basically. There's actually a few good options. And George, your move is amazing. There's really a few good moves here, and I want to talk about them, and I'm going to talk about the moves you gave me. And wow, Bo, amazing stuff. That's a great move as well. So there's two good moves, and George and Bo gave me two of them. F5 is something we have to be really hesitant to play because it's so committal. We're opening up our own king, and we're creating this weak backward pawn. And that means that white is going to have an easy time here. If you notice, if we just stop for a second, it's unclear what white's trying to do here. Right? This is how most of your chess games look like. It's not like, oh my God, my opponent's about to mate me in one. How do I play? It's more like, okay, I have a position. I don't see what he's threatening. My pieces are good. What do I do? And then you start making concessions. And then you're like, okay, let me just weaken this to do that. This is where you just stop and try to come up with a plan. There's a few plans. Plan number one, Mark said trade. Mark said trade when you play against the isolated pawn. How do I trade? I'm going to play the move knight e4 so I can take the bishop. Very basic. We also open this square for our bishop. This is a good move. I accept this. This is a completely fine answer. If the bishop ever moves, that means f4 is very loose. So we're not really too hesitant, too worried about that. The other option is knight c4. I like this move as well. Not only are we trying to act, this is the best move, by the way. Not only are we trying to fork, but what is their intention behind this move, apart from forking? Let's say they deal with it. Let's say they play rook b1. But what are we doing now? Where can this knight come in? Oh, wait, no, sorry, this rook. The rook was hanging. Sorry, my apologies. Nobody told me, but I told you I was going to make mistakes. It's so weird. Like, you think about the position so deeply and then, my rook is hanging. Yeah, Richard, that's right. The issue is their pawns are overextended, all of them, except for this pawn on h2. It just can't work. It can't work. And we can play our knight into e3, hitting the rook and hitting the pawn. Now, even if we weren't hitting the rook and they could somehow defend it, our knight is still fantastic here. Absolutely amazing. Knight c2 could be idea. The rook is hanging. Your knight is bad, and we are improving it. But I mean, the knight isn't bad. The knight could be improved. That's maybe the comment I should make. And notice that knight c4 only makes sense because we're playing against our opponent's pieces here. Everything else doesn't really do a good job of it. If we play knight c7, knight dc7, to transfer to b5, we're giving our opponent opportunity to just start pushing on the king side. because they have a very basic caveman style attack coming. The other thing is, if we go knight e8, it's kind of the same issue. Okay, we go here, now h5. Now we can't go here because there's a fork, so we go here. Now suddenly maybe there's a pin that we have to worry about. Maybe their queen can come in. It's like, what? Maybe they just move their king. Knight e4, and then they could bring the bishop back. It's like, why are we taking this on? This is so unnecessary. Before they even have a chance to do anything, we're already creating immediate threats that they have to react to. Knight c4 is a great move. Knight e4 is a more basic and easy move to play. That is good, by the way. I want to make it clear knight e4 is a good move. But knight c4 is by far the best. I think black is close to winning, if not winning already. Two very famous chess players. You probably have heard of the latter, Levon Aronian. Very nice guy. He just transferred to play for the American team from Armenia. He has won World Cups. He has won Olympiads. Very successful chess player. But for some reason, always choking in the candidates. Not doing well there. Okay, I could always, when it's about chess history, I could go on forever. As a son born to a Soviet family, chess is part of our blood, so chess history is in our nature. White seems to have a normal position here. How do you think white should develop in this position? And I want to talk about what to avoid. How should white develop here? And remember, we're sticking with the theme of blockading. Now, knight e2, very slow. We're just letting, as soon as we move our knight to go here, we're letting them be aggressive. Right? It's like, why? Why? Suddenly they can attack us. Even though they have an isolated pawn, we're giving them activity. I would say that this is not, actually, I don't want to say anything yet. I'll give you guys 30 more seconds and then I'll address more. And try not to just give me one move. As always, we're trying to develop our pieces. We're just in the beginning stages of this game. I like the idea of not focusing on blockading. Blockading here is a mistake. I'm going to talk about why. And not even now, but in general. This is not one of those positions where you blockade. Okay, why? It's like, Mark, what's the difference? They're all isolated pawns. Mark, what are you telling us? You're confusing me. The issue is we just should worry about putting our pieces on the most optimal squares. And you're going to see that white is going to make way too many concessions for the sake of creating a strong blockade. Now, obviously, we don't want to go knight d4 because black at some point will take it. I mean, you can make the argument for taking it now even, right? And some check and actually maybe, yeah, some check even, and maybe their knight can come in. Or maybe even the fact that this pawn could be loose could be an issue. Maybe the queen can go to b6. Maybe the knight can come to e5. And they can just become aggressive. The issue with bishop d3 is... Actually, no, there's no issue with bishop d3. Sorry, bishop d3 is a fine move. We could go b4, but this is not really a tempo on the bishop because tempo indicates that you're developing yourself, and we're not improving our position at all with this move. I mean, sure, we're hitting the bishop, but how does this improve anything? White played bishop e2. And their point behind this move is to ensure that they can really blockade on d4. So black is going to take more space, play castles, bishop b7. And here white plays rook d1. Now rook c8. White plays bishop e1. And as you see, too many concessions are being made. We put our bishop not on the most optimal square, away from the open diagonal. We're bringing our bishop back. Another concession. And black, in the meantime, has just been slowly improving their position. Black plays rook e8, rook c1, knight f8, and this is where it really happens. White plays knight d4. Seemingly a good move. All right. How should black play in this position? Or maybe I should say in this position. Let's say this position. Black decides to improve their queen. White played here. How should black play in this position? The mistake of blockading. Richard, you seem a little unsure. No, this is not an easy question. As I said, it becomes difficult quickly. What? Okay, Isaac, let me respond to you. What if I do that, Isaac? What will you play? You do that anyway? But then, Isaac, don't I just go... right now, Bo? Well, I'll give you a hint. That move is eventually going to be the right answer. I wouldn't say it's the best move in the moment. And I'll tell you why later. I'll tell everyone why, actually. Yes, Isaac, that's right. This is actually, this is really important that I'm showing you this because it's something you have to be really wary about when you're playing against the isolate pawn, this exact idea. Alexander Husman was not, and it just seems that he practically just has a good position. You guys are basically getting what I want you guys to get. Now, you guys are giving me the move in different orders. Some of you are giving it to me at the optimal order, and some of you are giving it to me in a different order, which is still okay. I'll give maybe 15 more seconds, and then I'll talk about it. Knight e4 is an okay move, but it doesn't really punish white for their slow play. If we go knight e6, we're just trading material off. Which, if we have an isolate pawn, do we really want to do that? If they take, I mean, I guess we could take with the pawn, then our structure is a little bit weak, and eventually they're going to play e4. Like, you can make the argument of playing e4. Bo, that's perfect. Yeah, Bo. You can make the argument that they'll play e4 next, and then e5. Then suddenly, yikes, they could be attacking us. We take the knight first. Shocking move. You're like, what? You trade off your best minor piece? Okay, well, it's a committal decision, but why? If they do pawn takes, then they just tactically are not able to hold on to the pawn. We could either go rook c4 first or knight e6, but basically this pawn is not, you're not going to be able to hold on too long. Also, even if you are able to hold on to the pawn, I can activate my pieces very nicely along the center, and your pieces are so poorly placed. So even though the position is semi-open, your bishops are not going to show their advantage here because of their poor placement. So you move your bishop back. Okay, great. You take, well, then you unisolate my pawn. I don't even know if that's a move, if that's a word. I'll probably double up on the e file, and I'm pretty happy. If they take with the rook, then, well, I guess you guys could probably figure out what black does here. What will black play? Right. So Richard, I already talked about that in the other line. That's good. But there's actually something even better than that. Obviously, as everyone can predict, the first move is not too difficult to find. 96. Our friend brings the rook back. Now what? What was the point of taking the knight and doing all this? Why? Why did black put themselves through the trouble of getting rid of their best minor piece? To do what? Of course, knight g5 to e4, you can make the argument for it. Knight e4 right now, but then again, knight e4 is not too, it's not something that we should be afraid of. Suddenly the d5 pawn is falling. Wow, Richard. Wow. Too good for me, Richard. Push with d4. If they take, well then, okay, this is just horrible. We can take, we can go knight g5. Probably taking is just horrible for white. If they take our bishop, and then they take our pawn, it seems that we just blundered a pawn. But in fact, knight f4. We're threatening mate in one. And okay, if they go g3, that doesn't really stop the main one. And if they go f3, then forget about anything. Just how do we win material? I don't even, there might be a mate here, but who cares? How do we just win material in this position? Due to the pin, the knight is actually not doing anything. So you have to imagine the knight is not even there. And we look at our opponent's king. And we see that it's all alone. And we see rook. Which means that we also thus see the winning move, which is knight to e2. Very nice. Very nice game. The slow development with the sole purpose of blockading just isn't it. What I'm trying to teach you in this class is blockading is important. It's a key idea of playing against isolated pawn. But no plan is so great that you could be so slow to execute that your opponent will let you off the hook and just watch. Aronian in 2010 was probably one of the best players in the world. I think he was 2,800 at the time. He's not going to let you off the hook playing like this. And so that means that blockading is important, but if you can't do it, don't do it. Don't be like, oh my God, Mark had this whole class about blockading. It was great. My opponent has an isolated pawn. How do I blockade? How do I blockade? How do I blockade? I, in the process of my future with Annex, will teach you many different concepts. But that doesn't mean that every time that that concept could be played, that it should. I'm just trying to enhance your pattern recognition in a way that you can just have these ideas enter your head. As soon as they start entering your mind, I've won. Then I've done my job. Then it is up to you to make that assessment. The big difference between you and me is actually, I would say it's one thing. It's just pattern recognition, nothing else. You never, of course, there might be some small things here and there, but pattern recognition is the big thing. I have seen more positions. I'm more familiar with more positions. And thus, when I see a position, I'm like, okay, there's many different ideas here. Which one should I pick from what I am familiar with in the past? A lot of you, when you guys play chess, you're not familiar with these patterns. So you're just like, okay, let's just make a move. But that is actually the difference. So once you're at my stage and you're like, okay, he has a nice safe pawn. Okay, what do I do? Okay, I could just develop normally. Okay, I could blockade. Okay, I could trade off pieces. Okay, I can play on the queen side. Okay, I have many different plans. Okay, which one will I pick? That is the dialogue I want you to have in your head. Not, oh my God, he taught me this, let's do that. Mark is going to be so happy with me. Your goal is not to make me happy. Your goal is to make yourself happy. I'll be happy if you're happy. Okay, let's bring it back to the basics. I've seemed to have made it quite complex. So let's bring it back. Let's tie back all in. Very basic. It's actually a Tarrasch, the French one, Peter, not the Queen's Gambit one. This one is the French Tarrasch. And very common. We've traded off the E and D pawn for the C and E pawn. They have this isolate pawn on D5. Okay. How should I play? There's no trick. I want to make this clear. I'm not tricking you. So don't think that there's some trick. I want to make sure I put that in. So you're not like, okay, Mark must be saying something. Now remember though, what have we spoken about? Remember what we spoke about. Everything that we talked about is important. Do we use this knight? No. The knight on F3 does not move. We keep the knight on F3. We don't move it. Even though at the moment it doesn't seem that they have any attack, they don't need much to start really going for something on this diagonal. Right? Like if we go here now, we really have to get concerned about H2. We move the knight now, all of a sudden their knight comes in. And it's like, why all this? I like the idea of knight B3. Why? Well, if they take, we welcome this trade. Even though it seems that we're going to double our pawns, how should we take the knight? Certainly, we should take it with the A pawn, the A takes. We activate our rook. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, the rook can't move, so we just tag and that's it. But actually, if they go A6, you can make the argument for a rook lift along the fourth rank. This is the Botvinnik idea, very patented in the Caro-Kann. As I said, ideas, pattern recognition. I'll just show it to you. I'm going to delete this, but I'm just going to show it to you. You guys are probably all familiar with the Caro-Kann. And there's this very famous line that Botvinnik invented, where in this position, everything seems normal. And any normal development is good. Like any move that you think is probably fine here. But he came up with the move H4. We're threatening to trap the bishop. So he goes H6, now H5. Okay, and so what was the point of hiding his bishop here? And in fact, why we'll trade off bishops here anyway. The point is that we're able to later introduce the rook into the attack. So when you go here, then you go here, and then you castle, I can now play knight e4, and then I'm going to go here in mate 2. And already I have a huge attack. Now, I would not be able to have this idea just springboarded into my head when we talked about, which one? This position of rook lift. But I know the Caro-Kann, and I know the rook lift there. And so suddenly that idea pops into my head here. And obviously we could put pressure on the d5 pawn if necessary, but a rook lift here could be useful. I'm not saying we have to do it. Again, we make that assessment in this position. I would obviously certainly develop the bishop. I'll probably get my queen active. And then you could consider maybe rook d1, which is a much more basic move. Rook a4 is probably okay as well. Okay, so let's just put in bishop e3, just a few moves. So if you review this later, it kind of makes more sense. Something like this. What if they don't take? What if they just play rook c8? What will we do now? No time like the present to blockade. We could reinforce the knight if it's getting attacked, but actually knight d4 is actually threatening something a little bit tricky. What is the idea behind knight d4? What kind of potentially active idea are we threatening? Let's say I play a6. I want to go b5. That's right, Richard. Our famous friend Benjamin would tell us both. Knight f5, Benjamin Feingold's quote. Knight f5. I want fries. The answer is fries. The answer is knight f5. Put our knight into their throats here already, because not only going to take their bishop, that means that pin is going to be very painful. Like even if they go 96, yoinks. So not only do they have the isolate pawn, we're also attacking them. I've always shown you positions where they have the isolated pawn and they're putting pressure on us. So it's like they have one good thing, one bad thing. But here they have nothing, no good redeeming thing coming for them. We're putting pressure on them and they have the weakness. Not good. Not good. This is what we want to avoid if we have the isolated pawn. Okay, we can make this main line. And let's do 7. Okay, we did 8. I guess we're not going to have time to do the Timur game, which is fine. It was a rather complex one. This is kind of the last test of what we've spoken about. I'll give you guys a minute. And actually, I don't want you to give me any moves for your opponent. I don't care about them. I want you to give me the next 3 moves for white. 3. I want you to answer 2 questions. Actually, the next 4. Sorry, the next 4 moves. Where does this knight go? Where does the queen go? And where does this rook go? But do it in the process of moves. Don't just tell me in words. Give me chess notation. Yeah, Isaac, that's not bad. That's not bad. I would say I almost certainly agree. Almost. Wow, George, that's gutsy. Play that move. I would be nervous to play that kind of move. But okay, well, I should talk about that move. It's good that you brought that up. Yeah, Isaac, that's right. That is right. Remember, Isaac, we spoke about that in the earlier chapters, right? Chapter 1, actually. Everything that is in this question actually involves no outside knowledge of chess. It just involves everything we spoke of today. If you were here for the whole class and you heard me out in the middle of all my ranting, and you remembered, then that's all I need. First thing, we keep the knight on f3. This knight does not go here. No. Even though the attacking chances for him seem to be slim to none. Why would we? Where would the knight go? That's the ultimate question. Forget about even them attacking us. What are we doing with this guy? So we want to reroute this knight. 92 is okay, but I always encourage you to look for active moves. I'm one of the most aggressive chess players I know. I like to play aggressively. So if you have the opportunity to play 92 or knight b5 and you play 92, I will be disappointed. You're like, but Mark, it does the same thing. And you know what? I can't even disagree with you. I can't even disagree. But I like knight b5. We're not even threatening anything. You're like, but the pawn's not even being attacked. George, I want to talk about your move too in a moment. I will do that. If they, right now, if we take, they just take back. There's no, this sack does not work. In fact, we're just running out of material here, running out of ammo. Knight b5. If they go a6, we just strongly place our knight. Let's say they play queen b6. Here's a side question. Is this bishop worth taking? And justify your answer. Don't just say yes or no. Maybe a sentence. Tell me why. So it's funny. I'm going to tell you an answer, but I'm going to tell you that there's a FIDE master who is probably 80 meters away from me who would disagree with my answer. My father, who's a FIDE master, loves bishops. loves them. And so he's going to say, Mark, you have to take. What are you? If you tell them anything else, you're just teaching them garbage. So disclaimer, I'm teaching you garbage right now. Don't take the bishop. The bishop is bad. No, but honestly, I disagree with my father here. Like, certainly it's something to think about. I like the idea of knight f5 more than taking, because apart from the fact that this apart from the fact that this bishop is poorly placed and it's bad and staring at pawns, if we take, we just improve their pawn structure. They have hanging pawns now instead of isolated. It's an improved version of an isolated pawn. They have an open f-file. It's like, why? And there's no rush to take the bishop. If we really care, we could always play h3 to ensure the bishop has nowhere to go. So taking is no rush. Now, the only reason taking could be good is if we can create this kind of structure. Like, imagine the knight wasn't hanging. Then if we can create a structure that's like this, then potentially it's good. Or if we can do this, like, let's say the position's like something like this. This is good. But that's because they have the isolated pawn, and that means we could put pressure on it. But that's not how chess is played. This is impossible. So this just doesn't make any sense. Knight takes is not worth it. We will defend the pawn very similarly to what we talked about here. We put the queen on e7. We were able to run away from all the problems. Queen e2, putting our queen behind the pawn. We can play against this pawn later. This pawn is not going anywhere. We're stopping any of their plans before we do our own thing. We get our rooks active. Bishop on f4, some move, rook d1, great position, perfect. Oh, it's important to mention, I mean, nobody asked, but if the knight goes here, then you can make the argument for this position, because it's those pawns that we spoke about just briefly, that he has damaged pawns. But the issue is maybe the knight has nowhere to go. But of course, these pawns are really bad. No. Okay, so the beautiful structure is this. We blockaded the pawn. Our pieces are standing perfectly. Now our next goal is either to play here to improve our dark square bishop, to put our knight in the center. Maybe we can build our own attack on the king side. Maybe we can rush our pawns, many different plans. The last thing I want to say before I wrap this up is we cannot play the move e4. I mean, we can't play e4, but we don't want to, because it gets rid of the isolated pawn. And black is slightly worse here, but that is all. They are only slightly worse. We have a spatial advantage, but we got rid of the biggest reason for them being in a disadvantage, which was the isolated pawn. They had no way of trading it. We are making sure now that they have no way of trading it. And because of that, we have no reason to not think that we are better. We're just in the driver's seat here. And we are going to move from here on in, taking more space here, here, and so forth. Okay, maybe I will put the answers to chapter 9, but I will email the homework to George. Or actually, maybe I should end the recording here. How do I stop? Here, let me stop recording, but then I can stop recording.